Good morning. I am Christina Villarreal, but everybody, as you heard, my students yelled out my name. I go by V or Dr. V while I'm here, and I'm excited to share parts of my story today. I also, like some of my colleagues have mentioned, I also am a graduate of this institution, and the fun circle of that story is that I graduated in 2005 from the same program that I now direct. So, thank you. So hopefully, students, you're going to be the future directors of your programs. Yes? All right. It's all a long longitudinal recruitment strategy. Teach you to come back to work here. So what I want to talk to you about today, I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to do this in 8 minutes. But I want to imagine, I'm used to having a laser pointer too, so I'm going to just imagine a laser when I'm pointing towards either of these screens. But I want you to imagine, when you ask somebody for a little slice, you're like, oh, just give me like a really thin piece. And they cut that really thin. I want to imagine my talk, this 8 minutes is a very thin, multi-layered slice of cake. And what I'll talk you through today are these three pieces and aspects of my work. Again, positionality being more than just naming who we are, but really doing the analysis of how who we are impacts what we do, the kind of research that I do, as well as the type of teacher that I am. So to really understand, and in starting with positionality, I figured I would tell you a love story. I want to tell you about the first time that I fell in love. I fell in love in 2005, right after I graduated from this institution on 98th Avenue in deep East Oakland. Hey, where you at? Where's the Bay? Is the Bay Area in the building? Hey, there it is. I was waiting. I was counting on you all to make some noise when you saw it. And it's really hard to describe how deep that love actually was. I fell in love with teaching. I fell in love with my students. I fell in love with justice. And I had never experienced that type of reciprocity, that type of intellectual engagement, that type of rigor, that type of challenge, that type of hope, more than 98th Avenue. Some of the pictures, I'm going through them pretty quickly, are also photos of the most important teachers I ever had. So much of what I learned and what informs my role as both a researcher and an educator, I didn't learn from books. I learned a lot from books, but more importantly, I also learned a lot from the beautiful human beings that you see. So much so that when I did graduate, I graduated from Columbia in New York. Of course, I went back to where my heart and my soul continues to reside, on 98th Avenue in East Oakland. And I said this at the Student of Color orientation on Saturday, that when I look at students, and similar to all of you, I don't only see a year. I see an entire life. I see a lifetime. And we've always talked about that when I work with my teachers, that when you see your students, we just taught summer school for 6 weeks, to see more than that 6 weeks, to see beyond those moments. And so for me, those relationships have sustained the type of work that I do. So just to show you a little before and afters that I was able to dig up, here's baby Dewan in 2007. And grown up Dewan, and baby Brianna and Jasmine, and at my party a couple months ago now. So for when I did enter, both going into education, which I'm very, very proud of. And I knew that when I wanted to study, I've always told people that I feel the most alive when I'm in a classroom. And so that's as an educator, as a researcher, as a student. I knew that I had to find a methodology that was compatible with my way of being in the world, my way of seeing it, my way of analyzing it, and my hopes for transforming it, which is what led me to a methodology that was developed right here at HGSE called Portraiture. And that's another class, another plug for a class. But the types of questions, right, that I wanted to ask, oftentimes, and I'm going through this really quickly, but a lot of what we come here for, right? And I appreciate my colleagues had these wonderful frameworks to help us think about the what, the how, and the why. And we oftentimes in teacher ed, we focus a lot on the theories, the practices, and the strategies. And not often enough We don't do the deeper digs into who we are, what moves us, and what actually moves us to make curricular and pedagogical decisions. And this is what I wanted to study, not in place of the surface knowledge. That's important, but studying it alone is insufficient. It needs to be a both and. And so portraiture is a methodology that allows for that by blending rigorous empiricism with aesthetics. So if you imagine what portraits actually capture, you think about that it's supposed to capture both the essence as well as what you see, but also beneath the surface. So I'm going to share a very little bit about one of my portraits, Grace, and share a bit about what I saw in her classroom, and then what I learned in interviews in both the how and the why of what she did. So these were the key features of her practice that emerged, and we're going to talk about compassion. And so in a unit on the Little Rock crisis, how many of you have watched Eyes on the Prize? I would start singing the song for you, remember? Do you remember seeing this in school? So she was using this documentary in her class, and a little bit of the what. I'll tell you what it is you're looking at because I know you can't read it, but she was drawing from Facing History curriculum. You can snap your fingers if you feel familiar with it. I also use a lot of Facing History curriculum. And what you see on the left is Facing History's version of a worksheet that the young people are asked to complete while they are viewing the episode on Fighting Back, and on the right is Grace's version. And what I found, or when I asked Grace about her version, she talked about her critique of Facing History's version, and the irony of having a room full of predominantly black and brown students watch a video about the experiences of 9 black students, but only being asked to write down the decisions of 2 white men in power, President Eisenhower and Governor Faubus. And in Grace's version, she asked them, in addition to writing down the decisions of the 2 white men in power, she'll also ask her students to answer questions about Elizabeth Eckford, the journalist Alex Wilson, Minnie Jean, Ernest Green. So in this way, she positioned everybody as an actor in this drama that played out in U.S. history. Simultaneously, not just having students write things down, she would also engage in affective dimensions of teaching by pausing the video strategically to ask some of these questions and allowing young people the opportunity to relate it to their everyday experiences. So asking for things like stressors of having to live with segregation and police brutality. So in my interviews, I wanted to understand more about her curricular and pedagogical decision-making process. What I got was a lot of the typical answers. Oh, she did all three trainings in the series of Facing History. She majored in ethnic studies in undergrad at UCLA. And so this helped me to understand a lot of the what, where she got her content knowledge, a lot of the pedagogical strategies I saw her enacting in the classroom. In terms of understanding the deeper and the why, and asking her about her passion and her commitment to teaching about these topics and to centering compassion in her classroom. Her immediate answer was, my mom. I asked her about her commitment to justice, and she said, well, I guess it would start with my mother. She named me Tianxing, which translates to heavenly heart. And she told me stories about how when she was younger and she'd be annoyed with people from school, she'd come home and her mom would say, I named you, I gave you this name because you are supposed to have a heart that is bigger than the sky. And so when people are being mean to you, it just means that they need an extra hug and that your heart needs to be big enough to give them that love. So I saw this manifest in a variety of ways in Grace's classroom. We're almost out of time, so I'm gonna encourage you to read more about Grace's story. But I wanted to share this piece in what I was calling the pedagogical origin stories. And so Grace was one of the teachers that I studied, and this was really great because it's Kathy's slide. Maybe think of yours, the why, the how, and the what. And so the humanizing learning experiences that I was witnessing in the classroom, which I was representing in the portraits, really represented the what. And the various curricular and pedagogical moves that I saw them each making, the how, or how we do, what you saw in terms of the worksheet, some of the questions that she posed, but the deeper pieces that I was really interested in and what I found to be the most compelling finding were their origin stories. Each one of these teachers had a series of stories that helped me to understand what I saw to be the magic in their classroom. And they're not necessarily stories you would maybe, I guess, expect. You have to get to know each of the teachers and to do that deeper dig beneath the surface. But in really looking and knowing that it also isn't a linear process, right? It's dialogical, that this isn't a series per se, but that this is constantly happening in each and every one of us. And that who we are, or what I say with my teachers oftentimes, is that our biographies influence every curricular and pedagogical move we make, which leads me now to the last part, which I'll spend about a minute on, praxis here, and how this influences my work as a teacher educator. This is my current cohort. Where are they? Where they're back there? I saw them over there. Hey, there you are. It's our photograph from this summer. And how this really informs my work and what I had talked about in terms of my research was that oftentimes we focus a lot on technical pedagogy, which focuses on what we need to know and what we need to do. So you think about above the iceberg, the skills, the strategies, the content knowledge, as critical or as mainstream as you want to think of it, and that's a lot of the head. And I want to push towards engaging, not at the expense of technical, but moving towards a relational pedagogy, which focuses on who we are and who we need to be for the young people that we serve in our classrooms, and looking at the spiritual and social and political forces that influences the decisions that we make. And so right in there, in that middle piece is what mostly informs the approach to directing the teacher ed program. And what I would leave you with is in thinking about, I know you started with mirrors today, that you are absolutely here and that the technical is absolutely necessary. We need those skills, we need those strategies for the various educational contexts that we're moving into, but not at the expense of asking the questions of who we are. We oftentimes ask each other, how are you? But we don't answer the question of who are you? So I'll ask you today, who are you? Who do you want to be? Who are you becoming? And I will also ask you that, remind me to ask you at graduation in May. Thank you so much.